ladies and gentlemen, there is a moment, sacred, invisible, when the atmosphere shifts, a holy second where your whisper touches heaven and heaven touches earth. That moment is now. This is not just another message, and this is not just another prayer. This is the divine key that opens the floodgates of the miraculous. And so don't just listen, lean in. Because by the end of this speech, something in your life will be different. If you stay until the final word, you will not just hear about miracles. You will step into one. You've cried, you've waited, you've questioned. But the moment you speak this prayer, not in fear, not in doubt, but in faith, something begins to move in the invisible realm. Heaven doesn't respond to perfect prayers. It responds to honest heart. And when your heart is open, when your soul is surrendered, when your voice speaks in alignment with the divine, the impossible bows down. Say it not with worry, but with trust. Father, I cannot, but you can. I step aside so you may step in. I surrender what I cannot fix, and I receive what only you can do. Let your will be done, let your power flow, and let your glory be revealed in my life. Amen. It's not complicated. It's not theatrical. But when spoken with faith, this prayer becomes a vessel of glory. Because it's not about you. It's not about your strength, your perfection, or your record. It's about God's mercy, His presence, His unchanging nature. This prayer positions you not as a beggar, but as a child, not hoping but expecting. The sound of belief, the sound of surrender, the sound of this simple prayer rising like incense, drawing divine attention. When you speak in faith, your words echo in eternity. And the moment you speak this prayer, angels are dispatched, chains are broken, and doors swing open. God isn't waiting for tomorrow. He's waiting for your yes, your surrender, your spoken belief. Don't underestimate what can happen when a simple heart prays a powerful prayer. Miracles do not simply happen by accident. They're not random bursts of divine favor reserved for the chosen few. No, miracles are intentional responses to the spoken word of faith. They are heaven's answer to a soul that dares to believe and speaks in alignment with that belief. From the beginning of time, everything that was created came into being through words. Let there be light, and there was light. Words formed the universe, and words still carry that divine energy, especially when they are saturated in faith. There is a mystery in the spoken word that few tap into. You can carry belief in your heart, but until that belief is released through your mouth, it often remains dormant. Faith is not silent, it is vocal, it is courageous, it declares. Even when the eyes see nothing, the power of spoken faith does not lie in shouting louder, using religious language, or impressing others with eloquence. The power lies in sincerity, conviction, an unwavering expectation that what is spoken shall come to pass. You see, the mouth is a gateway between the spiritual and the physical. It is through your words that invisible thoughts become visible actions. What you believe in your heart becomes tangible the moment you give it voice. When you speak with faith, you are not just making a hopeful statement. You are issuing a decree, a divine legal statement in the courts of heaven. And heaven honors the sound of faith. The unseen realm responds to those who speak as if it's already done, who declare healing when the pain is still present, who declare peace while the storm still rages. It is not magic, and it is not mind over matter. It is deeper than that. It is the soul aligning itself with the Creator and speaking as He speaks, calling things that are not as though they were. Every miracle begins with a word, whether whispered or declared with authority. What makes the difference is the spirit behind that word. When the spirit of faith is behind your voice, your prayer becomes a force. It becomes an invitation for the divine to enter your moment and change it forever. Many miss their miracle because they hesitate to speak. They wait until conditions are perfect. They wait until they feel it. They wait until the pain is gone or the evidence appears. But the principle of faith requires you to speak first, believe first, and then see. Faith never demands proof. It demands trust. When you speak faith into your situation, you are not denying reality. You are declaring a greater reality. You are affirming that what is seen is temporary, and what is unseen is eternal and powerful. There is a reason why the enemy of your soul wants you silent, because silence, though sometimes holy, can also be a trap when born from fear or doubt. When you stop speaking in faith, you stop releasing power. When you hesitate to declare the goodness and power of God over your life, you allow fear to fill the void. The enemy fears your words when they are saturated in truth. He fears your declarations when they align with divine will, because your words can shift the atmosphere, call angels to attention, and shatter chains in the spirit. The greatest miracles often begin with the simplest words. Be healed, it is finished, let it be done to me. These are not elaborate sentences, but they are full of belief. You don't need to convince God with lengthy speeches. You need only to believe enough to speak what you know in your spirit. Even if your voice trembles, even if your circumstances scream the opposite, speak anyway. Speak with the authority of a child who knows they are loved, not a beggar hoping to be seen. Words spoken in faith carry weight. They do not evaporate. They are planted in the spiritual soil, and at the appointed time they bring forth fruit. Every time you declare healing, freedom, restoration, or breakthrough, you are not just making noise. You are building a future. You are constructing an atmosphere where miracles can be birthed. And God, who is moved by faith, steps into that atmosphere and begins to do what only He can. But let's be clear, this is not about wishful thinking. This is not about name it and claim it arrogance. This is about alignment. When your heart, your mind, and your words align with divine truth, power is released. That alignment is the birthplace of miracles. You become a vessel, a conduit through which heaven touches earth. And the miracle? It begins the moment your voice becomes an echo of heaven's promise. Consider this. How many times have you remained silent, hoping things would change, waiting for a sign, for a feeling, for a shift? But what if this shift was waiting on your voice? What if the miracle was waiting for you to speak it into motion? You don't need 1,000 prayers. You need one spoken in faith, one declaration that says, I trust you, God, even now. That one sentence spoken from the depth of your soul has more power than hours of religious ritual. There's something sacred about hearing your own voice declare truth. When you speak it, your own ears hear it. Your own spirit receives it. Your own faith is stirred. Spoken faith is not just about moving the heavens. It's about transforming the speaker. It reprograms your mind. It silences your fear. It reinforces your trust. It reminds you that you are not helpless, not forgotten, not at the mercy of your circumstance. You are in partnership with the Creator. You have access to His authority to open your mouth, speak the promise, declare the truth, say the prayer, not in desperation, but in expectation, because the very moment you speak it, things begin to change. Not because you are powerful, but because you are connected to the One who is. Your voice becomes the sound that starts a miracle in motion, and all of heaven leans in to respond. Never underestimate the power of your words when they are drenched in faith. Miracles are not far away. They are waiting. And the moment you speak in faith, that exact moment, the miracle begins. There is something remarkable that happens when a person stops whispering their faith and begins to declare it with boldness, not arrogance, not pride, but holy, secret boldness, the kind that comes from knowing who you are and who your God is. Heaven does not remain indifferent to bold declarations. It reacts. It shifts. It moves. Boldness in the spiritual realm is not just personality. It is a posture. It is the position of someone who no longer negotiates with fear, who no longer bows to uncertainty, who no longer delays obedience. It is the voice of a soul that dares to stand in front of the Red Sea and say, I will cross. In Scripture and in life, we see a recurring theme. Heaven responds to bold people. People who pray big prayers, believe for impossible things, and speak with conviction even when everything around them looks the opposite. Not because they are trying to impress anyone, but because they are fully persuaded that the one they are speaking to is listening. Faith does not whisper when it has been tried and proven. When a person has walked through the valley, survived the night, and still lifts their hands to the sky and declares God's goodness, they are unstoppable. That kind of boldness attracts heaven's attention like a magnet. Angels stand ready when boldness fills the air. There are times when quiet faith is needed, when the whisper of a prayer is enough to stir the heavens. But there are also moments when your situation demands that you speak louder than your fears, louder than your doubts, louder than your history. When your past tells you they'll always be stuck, when the enemy tells you your prayers don't matter. That's when boldness must rise. That's when you stand in your living room or in your hospital room or in the middle of your storm and you declare, I will not die here. I will live and declare the works of the Lord. Bold declarations are not just for show. They're for war. They are weapons. They are acts of defiance against the plans of darkness. They are faith in action. When you declare with boldness, you're not just speaking, you're authorizing. You're giving heaven permission to invade earth through your faith. You are choosing to partner with the power of the Almighty in inviting His will to be done in your life, just as it is in heaven. This kind of boldness doesn't come from hype. It comes from revelation. It is birthed in the secret place where you've learned to trust Him, not just when things are good, but when everything is falling apart, when you've seen Him come through before. Boldness becomes your native language. You speak not because you are trying to get God's attention, but because you know you already have it. Boldness is not volume. It is certainty. It is standing on the promises of God and refusing to budge. Heaven moves when you speak like you know God is listening, when you stop begging and start declaring, when you stop waiting for the perfect moment and begin speaking into the chaos. Peace, be still. You must understand, your voice carries weight in the spiritual realm. Your words, when wrapped in bold faith, carry the authority of heaven. That is not a poetic idea. It is a truth you must accept if you are to live the life God intended. There is a reason why Jesus often asked people, what do you want me to do for you? Not because He didn't know, but because He needed them to say it, to declare it, to speak with faith. Blind men cried out, and He responded. The woman with the issue of blood touched the hem of His garment, but before her healing she said within herself, if I just touch Him, I will be healed. There is always a sound before the shift, always a word before the wonder. When you declare with boldness, you are not trying to twist God's arm. You are aligning with His nature. He is a miracle-working God, a healer, a provider, a restorer. And when you speak boldly in agreement with who He is, you create an atmosphere where miracles become inevitable. You stir up the realm of faith. You silence the accuser. You shatter doubt. Bold declarations are not for the proud. They are for the desperate and the determined. Those who have decided that they will not back down. They will not remain silent. They will speak until heaven moves. So what does it mean to declare boldly? It means you don't wait until you feel brave. It means you speak truth over your situation when everything in you wants to give up. You say, I am healed, even when the pain is still present. You say, God is restoring my family, even when relationships look broken. You say, provision is coming, even when the bills are stacking up. Boldness is not blind. It is choosing to see with spiritual eyes instead of physical ones. The truth is, bold declarations change you as much as they change the world around you. They fortify your spirit, They remind your soul who your God is. They shake off the dust of doubt and ignite courage. And that courage becomes contagious. Others hear your boldness and find their own. Your voice becomes a trumpet, a signal to heaven that says, I'm ready, I believe, let it be done. You may be standing at the edge of a miracle and not even know it. One word could change everything. One declaration could open a door that has remained closed for years. But you must speak it. Not timidly, not hoping, boldly, knowing that when you declare in faith, God hears. And God moves. Heaven responds not to perfection, but to boldness born of trust. If you have ever felt like you're waiting on heaven to move, perhaps heaven is waiting on you to speak. The time for silence is over. The time for fear is done. Open your mouth and declare who God is, what He has promised, and what He will do, not someday, now. Because the moment you declare with boldness, the supernatural begins to stir, chains begin to loosen, darkness begins to tremble, healing begins to rise, and heaven, yes, heaven begins to move. There's a prayer, simple in words but powerful in impact, that breaks every chain, lifts every burden, and silences every torment. It is not rooted in complex theology, nor wrapped in elaborate ritual. It comes from the heart, a cry so pure, so full of surrender, that it shakes the foundation of darkness. This prayer, when spoken with faith, breaks every stronghold and floods the soul with unshakable peace. Strongholds are not always physical. They're often unseen barriers, fear, addiction, shame, doubt, depression, anxiety, that keep us imprisoned even when we appear free. These are spiritual fortresses that have been built brick by brick over time, reinforced by painful memories, lies believed, and wounds left unhealed. The enemy doesn't always need to chain your body when he can chain your mind. And so many walk through life, smiling, functioning, even succeeding, yet held captive by invisible walls. But the power of prayer lies in its ability to transcend those walls. Prayer is not a religious obligation. It is a divine transaction. A surrender of weakness for strength, a transfer of burden from our shoulders to God's. And when prayer is offered in absolute surrender, in total trust, it becomes more than words. It becomes a weapon, a supernatural force that demolishes strongholds with heavenly precision. This particular kind of prayer doesn't beg, it believes. It doesn't panic, it proclaims. It is rooted in truth, saturated in faith, and activated by humility. It sounds like this: God, I cannot do this on my own. I need you. Break what needs to be broken. Heal what needs to be healed. Take what I have and transform it into what you desire. Let your will be done in my life, not mine. I trust you fully. When this prayer leaves your lips, all of heaven leans in, because this is the language of faith. This is the sound of surrender. And where there is surrender, there is power. The reason this prayer breaks every stronghold is not because of how loud it is, but because of how true it is. It exposes every lie. It dismantles every scheme of the enemy. It says you no longer have authority here. And in that moment, light begins to flood the places where darkness had long taken residence. Peace begins to rise, not as a fleeting emotion, but as a permanent resident. A supernatural calm that surpasses understanding begins to take root, and suddenly the storm no longer controls you, because the Prince of Peace reigns within you. The power of this prayer is not just in the words themselves, but in the heart behind them. When you pray like this, you're not trying to impress God. You're inviting Him. You're opening the door wide and saying, come in, rearrange what you must, cleanse what's hidden, restore what's broken. And He does, every single time. So many live under the weight of stronghold that they believe they have to manage forever. But God never called you to manage what he came to destroy. The cross was not a symbol of tolerance. It was a declaration of war against everything that binds his children. When you speak this prayer in faith, you are coming into agreement with what was already finished on the cross. You're saying, let it be done in my life, here and now. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to be honest. Boldly honest. Sincerely surrendered. And in that place, even the strongest chains begin to crack. The lies that held you for years start to sound hollow. The fear that once paralyzed you starts to lose its grip. This prayer becomes the doorway to your freedom. And beyond that door is peace. Deep, healing, restorative peace. There is no stronghold too old, no wound too deep, no situation too hopeless for this kind of prayer to reach. It travels faster than thought, deeper than pain, stronger than resistance. It speaks to the very heart of God, and it moves him, not because he's distant, but because he delights in the nearness of the surrendered soul. Peace is not the absence of problems, it is the presence of God in the midst of them. And this prayer doesn't just ask for peace, it brings it. It invites the God of peace to stand guard over your heart and mind. Suddenly your environment may not change immediately, but you change within it, and that changes everything. You sleep differently. You breathe deeper. You stop rehearsing the worst-case scenario and start expecting divine intervention. This prayer is not magic, but it is miraculous, because the miracle begins in you. It is not always about seeing things change around you instantly. It's about seeing things from heaven's point of view. And from that place, fear loses its sting, doubt loses its volume, the enemy loses his power. When you pray like this, when you truly release everything into the hands of God, you don't walk away weaker. You walk away lighter, because he takes the weight, he takes the shame, he takes the burden, and in exchange he gives you peace, he gives you clarity, he gives you hope. This is the divine exchange that takes place every single time you choose surrender over striving. You may have prayed before and not seen the outcome you wanted, but don't let delay deceive you. The prayer of surrender always produces results, sometimes immediate, sometimes gradual, but always real. Because God does not ignore a broken, honest heart, and he does not delay without purpose. Your prayer was never in vain. Your cry has always mattered. And the moment you speak this kind of prayer again, fresh power is released. Today can be the day everything begins to shift. Not because the storm ends, but because you finally give God permission to be your shelter in it. You don't need eloquence. You don't need perfection. You just need willingness. Willingness to speak the prayer that breaks strongholds and brings peace. Speak it today. Speak it with faith. Speak it until your atmosphere changes. And then, watch what happens. There are prayers whispered in fear, and then there are prayers spoken in faith. There are words we release out of habit, and then there are declarations we proclaim because our spirit knows we are standing at the edge of heaven's movement. This particular kind of prayer, when spoken from the depths of your being with sincerity and expectancy, does not just rise to the heavens, it causes heaven to respond immediately. You were never meant to live disconnected from divine intervention. There is a reason your spirit longs for more, reaches for hope, cries out when you've reached your end. That reason is eternity written in your soul, and the connection between your heart and the heart of God is bridged through prayer. Not casual prayer, not memorized phrases, but living, breathing, bold prayer that pulls heaven into earth. When you speak this prayer, you are not just uttering words. You are activating a divine reaction. Heaven moves at the sound of faith. And this kind of faith isn't loud. It's pure. It isn't based on formula. It's born from intimacy. This prayer is born when you finally realize that nothing in this world can rescue you but the hand of God. It emerges from the place where pride dies and surrender is born. And the moment it is spoken, heaven does not delay. Heaven does not weigh your worth. Heaven does not check your resume. Heaven responds because this is the language God never ignores. This kind of prayer says, God, I'm ready, not for what I want, but for what you will. I align my life with your purpose. I let go of control. I surrender my timing, my fear, and my outcome. I choose trust. When those words leave your heart, when they are spoken not from fear but from divine trust, something begins to shift immediately. Not always seen with the natural eye, but always known in the spirit. Angels are released, doors begin to unlock, chains begin to loosen. Peace begins to rise, and the presence of God descends with authority. The reason this prayer draws such a powerful response from heaven is because it touches the heart of God. It mirrors the prayer of Christ in the garden when he said, not my will, but yours be done. It's the kind of prayer that doesn't demand from God, but trusts in God. It's a prayer that says, I believe you are who you say you are, and I trust you to do what only you can do. And that posture, that complete reliance, always gets heaven's attention. So many wonder why their prayers seem unanswered, why their cries seem to echo in silence. It's not that heaven is ignoring you. It's that heaven responds not to anxiety, but to agreement. Heaven responds not to panic, but to peace. Not peace from the world, but peace that comes from resting in the one who controls it all. This prayer places you in that space. It shifts your position from desperation to faith, from fear to authority, from helplessness to divine partnership. And once that shift happens, once you pray from that deep place, you will never go back to powerless, empty prayers. You will begin to understand the sacred weight of your words. You will realize that when you speak with conviction, when you speak with alignment, your voice causes spiritual reactions. Chains in the unseen realm begin to crack. Delays are broken, confusion lifts, and heaven moves. Instantly, there is nothing more powerful than a surrendered voice, echoing divine will. That kind of voice does not speak for attention. It speaks with authority. It knows that God is not far, but near. That he hears, not with delay, but with delight. And when you finally release the kind of prayer that God waits for, the heavens part and answers are sent, sometimes in ways you don't expect, sometimes in timing that surprises you, but always in love, always in truth, and always for your highest good. The beautiful thing is, you don't have to strive to make this happen. You don't have to manipulate God with emotion or wear yourself out with repetition. You simply need to come boldly and honestly. The power lies in the purity of your approach. You aren't performing, you're surrendering, and that surrender becomes the gateway for heaven's immediate movement. You may not see the full picture instantly, but mark this. Something changes the moment this prayer is spoken. Your inner world begins to align, your spiritual atmosphere begins to adjust, clarity begins to unfold. And what was once clouded with confusion becomes illuminated by revelation. God begins to reveal next steps, open new opportunities, and bring divine connections. Because heaven always responds to hearts fully surrendered. Sometimes the answer comes in the form of peace, sometimes in breakthrough, sometimes it's a word spoken through someone else, or a door that opens without your effort. But the result is always the same. God responds. Heaven responds. And you are never the same. Speak this prayer not once, but daily. Speak it in the still moments of the morning and the quiet hours of night. Let it become the rhythm of your spirit. God, I trust you. I surrender. Have your way. Do what only you can do. And watch how heaven cannot resist that kind of faith. Watch how quickly things begin to align. Watch how your heart changes, your mind clears, and your spirit strengthens. You were never meant to do this life alone. You were created for divine partnership. And prayer is the bridge that brings your earthly life into contact with heaven's agenda. Don't underestimate what happens when you speak from that place of raw faith. Heaven doesn't delay. Heaven doesn't wait. Heaven responds. And when it does, nothing stays the same. There is a kind of prayer that touches the very throne of God, a prayer not born of ritual but of revelation. It's not long or complicated. It doesn't require poetic words or impressive language, but it does require heart. It requires a spirit yielded, a voice sincere, and a faith that dares to believe the impossible. This prayer, simple yet sacred, activates something beyond your comprehension. It unleashes healing, deliverance, and breakthrough, not someday, not in theory, but in real, tangible moments of divine encounter. There are moments in life when all human effort reaches its limit. The doctors have done what they can. The counselors have spoken all they know. The money has run out. The strength is gone. And it is in those holy moments of desperation that this kind of prayer rises. It is the sound of someone who refuses to give up. Someone who may be broken, but still believes. Someone who may not see a way, but calls on the one who is the way. And when this kind of prayer is spoken, heaven leans in. Angels move. The presence of God invades the natural realm. And what seemed hopeless begins to shift. Healing is not just physical. There are wounds in the mind, in the soul, in the emotions. Scars people carry for years, thinking they'll never know freedom. But the moment this prayer is prayed, healing begins to flow like a river. It goes beyond medicine, beyond memory, and into the root of the pain. Because God does not just bandage what is broken. He restores. He makes all things new. And this prayer gives him permission to do exactly that. Deliverance is not just about casting out demons or breaking visible chains. It's about releasing the unseen ones. Addictions, fears, lies, cycles, habits that choke the life out of you. This prayer calls heaven's army into your battle. It is a declaration that the enemy no longer has jurisdiction over your mind, your life, or your future. And when you speak this prayer with true surrender, something happens in the spiritual realm. Darkness loses its grip. Old patterns begin to collapse. The things that once controlled you begin to fall away, because wherever the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. And this prayer opens the door wide for His Spirit to come in. Breakthrough is the result of both healing and deliverance. It's that moment when the walls fall, when the answer arrives, when the long delay suddenly ends, when the promise that felt so far becomes real. Breakthrough is not something you earn. It's something you receive, but it only comes when you invite it. This prayer is that invitation. It is heaven's trigger. It says, I'm ready, Lord. I've stopped trying to fix it on my own. I lay it all down. Come and move in power. And God never turns away from that cry. The beauty of this prayer is that it can be spoken in a whisper, in tears, or in silence. It doesn't have to be shouted, but it must be real. It must come from that sacred place where you know without a doubt that only God can turn it around. And the moment you release it, things begin to change. Maybe not in the way you expect, maybe not all at once, and it never fails. This prayer also aligns you with divine timing. So many are waiting for God to move, but they've never actually invited Him in with full surrender. They're praying for change while still holding control. But this prayer removes the barriers. It's not about getting what you want. It's about releasing what's blocking what God wants for you. And when that shift happens, acceleration begins. Doors you've knocked on for years begin to swing open. Prayers you thought had been forgotten suddenly come to life. Because now you're in alignment. You don't need a preacher to lay hands on you. You don't need a crowd. You don't need the perfect environment. All you need is a moment of clarity where you stop running, stop striving, and speak from the depth of your soul. God, I give you everything. Heal me. Deliver me. Break every chain. I believe you can. I believe you will. That's the kind of prayer that causes heaven to move instantly. That's the prayer that changes everything. And when that change comes, it won't just affect you. It will ripple out to your family, your relationships, your future. Because God doesn't just heal a wound. He makes your life a testimony. He doesn't just deliver you. He equips you to deliver others. He doesn't just break chains. He gives you keys for those still bound. Your prayer becomes a doorway for others to walk through. And that's the power of divine partnership. That's the miracle of real faith. You might feel unworthy. You might think your past disqualifies you. But God isn't looking at your mistakes. He's looking at your heart. And if your heart is open, your mouth willing, and your spirit surrendered, then you are exactly who He's waiting for. This prayer isn't reserved for the perfect. It's reserved for the willing. And the moment you speak it, heaven responds. So speak it boldly, speak it often, speak it until every part of you begins to believe it. God, heal me, deliver me, break through for me. I trust you, I surrender, I believe. And watch how quickly God shows up. Watch how peace returns. Watch how strength rises again. Watch how the impossible begins to unfold in your life. This isn't magic, it's faith. And faith moves mountains. Faith opens the heavens. Faith touches the heart of God. And when faith is mixed with surrender, there is no power in hell that can stop what God will do. So today, don't just pray. Pray this. Don't just hope. Believe. And don't just survive, expect breakthrough. Because healing, deliverance, and breakthrough aren't distant dreams. They're heaven's promises. And they begin the moment you speak this prayer. There comes a moment in every life when the soul longs for more than just answers. It longs for presence, not the presence of people or the presence of solutions, but the presence of God Himself. In this world of distractions, noise, and constant motion, there is something indescribably powerful about entering the stillness of divine connection. This prayer is not merely words. It is the doorway out, an entryway into the atmosphere where heaven touches earth. It doesn't just bring comfort. It opens the very gates to the presence of the Almighty. And once you step through it, you are never the same. To be in God's presence is not just to feel something. It is to be completely surrounded, overshadowed, and filled by the One who created the universe and knows you by name. It is to feel your heart settle. It is to feel your fears melt. It is to be reminded that you are never alone, never forgotten, never beyond reach. But this presence is not always accessed through routine. It is unlocked through intentional surrender. And this prayer, spoken with humility and faith, opens the way. God does not withhold His presence from the desperate, the broken, or the sincere. In fact, He draws near to them. His word promises, "Draw near to me, and I will draw near to you." This prayer, when spoken with honesty and expectation, is the act of drawing near. It's not just a monologue. It is an invitation. It is saying, God, I'm not asking you to come into my life as a visitor. I'm asking you to dwell here, to fill every space, to be everything I need. And when that invitation is extended in truth, He responds, not with silence, but with glory. There are moments in life where human understanding falls short. You don't need an explanation, you need an encounter. You don't need a plan, you need power. And this power is not found in striving, performance, or position. It is found in the secret place, the quiet corner of your heart, where this prayer is whispered like a key turning in a lock. And the door swings open. This kind of prayer breaks through the ordinary. It silences the distractions. It centers you not on your problems, but on your source. And when the Spirit of God enters, you will feel it. It may be in tears, it may be in overwhelming peace, it may be in a sudden clarity or a deep, unshakable calm, but you will know He is here. The Creator of all things has made His presence known to you, not because you earned it, not because you said it perfectly, but because you came to Him with an open heart. And when He comes, He doesn't come empty-handed. His presence brings supernatural power. Power to heal not just bodies, but souls. Power to restore joy where it was lost. Power to speak clarity into confusion, to bring light into darkness. Power to break every chain that has kept you bound for far too long. This is not emotional hype. This is the living reality of what happens when God shows up. Miracles are not just possibilities in this atmosphere. They become expected, because where God is, the impossible bows. Many search for signs and wonders, but signs and wonders follow His presence. When you seek the presence, you don't need to chase power. It begins to manifest around you. Mountains begin to move, situations begin to shift, and not just externally, but internally. You begin to feel boldness where fear once ruled. You begin to trust again. You begin to dream again. Because you are no longer depending on yourself. You are depending on Him. This prayer creates that shift. It turns the focus from the chaos around you to the King within you. It quiets the noise of anxiety and lifts your awareness to the nearness of God. And in His nearness, everything changes. You don't just survive, you rise. You don't just wait, you walk with purpose. You don't just hope, you live in the fullness of supernatural expectancy. Because you know the one who holds the outcome is standing beside you. This is not mystical and it is not complicated. It is divine simplicity. God, I need you. God, I invite you. God, come and fill me now. Those words, when spoken in faith, shake the very foundations of your reality, because God responds to hunger. He responds to humility. He responds to the childlike heart that says, I can do this alone, but I know you can. And in that moment, heaven responds. Some may ask, how do I know He'll come? The answer is this: He always comes to the surrendered heart. Always. It may not be how you expected. It may not be instant fireworks, but it will be real. It will be holy. It will be undeniable. And once you experience it, you'll never again settle for just going through the motions. You'll crave His presence more than anything else. Because it's in His presence that you remember who you are, and more importantly, whose you are. This prayer is not a formula, it's a lifeline. It's a holy whisper that reaches the throne room of heaven. And when you speak it, you are not just talking, you are aligning. You are stepping into agreement with divine reality, and that alignment opens the floodgates. What felt locked up becomes open. What felt stuck becomes fluid. What felt dead begins to live again. You were never meant to live on empty. You were never meant to strive in your own strength. You were meant to live filled, empowered, and in constant communion with the living God. This prayer reconnects you. It reminds your soul that you are not forgotten, that there is a power greater than your problem, that there is a love deeper than your pain, that there is a presence more precious than anything this world can offer. Speak this prayer not as a ritual, but as a response. A response to the God who waits to meet you, who waits to show you His glory, who waits to fill you with Himself. Let the words rise from within you. God, I long for you. I invite your presence. I need your power. Come, Holy One, I surrender all. And then be still, be quiet, be open, because He will come. And when He does, everything will change. There is a divine law written not on stone but in spirit. That heaven does not merely respond to need, emotion, or ritual. Heaven responds to faith, not just any faith, but the kind that flows from a heart that truly believes, a heart that dares to trust in the invisible, dares to hope even when hope feels lost, and dares to declare what it cannot yet see. This is the kind of heart that gets heaven's attention. This is the voice that moves the very heart of God. You see, words alone do not shake heaven. It is not eloquence that unlocks the supernatural. It is belief, deep, soul-rooted belief. It is the voice that rises not just from lips, but from the spirit within. The believing heart doesn't just repeat prayers. It lives them. It speaks with expectation. It calls forth things that are not as though they are. That kind of voice cannot be ignored by heaven because it carries the sound of alignment, of a human heart agreeing with divine will. When you speak from a place of belief, you are not simply expressing desire. You are partnering with divine power. You are not begging God to act. You are declaring from a place of intimate trust that He already is. Faith does not wait for evidence to arise in the natural before it speaks. It declares in the dark what God has promised in the light. It lifts its voice not because of what it sees, but because of who it knows. This believing heart may not look strong in the eyes of the world. It may be hidden in the quiet moments of a humble soul. It may tremble with emotion. It may weep in surrender. But its voice echoes in eternity. God is not moved by show. He is moved by sincerity. And when the heart of a person dares to rise above fear and speak faith, the heavens part and the supernatural begins to unfold. There are moments when life seems too heavy, when circumstances look too impossible, and when every door appears shut. In those moments, it is tempting to fall into silence or hopeless resignation, but the believing heart refuses to surrender its voice. It may whisper, it may groan, but it will not be silent because it knows deep down that faith spoken aloud is faith activated. The enemy wants your silence, but God responds to your sound. Even the smallest seed of faith, when spoken, becomes a force heaven will not ignore. I still believe. God is with me. He is able. It is done. These are not just words. These are spiritual declarations that pierce through doubt, fear, and delay. They are the raw sounds of trust when nothing makes sense, and heaven honors them every time. The believing heart is not about perfection. It is not about always having the right words. It is about posture. A posture of surrender, yes, but also a posture of expectation. It knows that God is not just a possibility. He is a certainty. The believing heart speaks not because of its circumstances, but despite them. It speaks because it knows that God has already made the first move. He has already declared His faithfulness, His love, His promises. The voice of the believing heart is a response to that divine invitation. When you speak from a believing heart, you activate divine authority. You take the promises of God and declare them into your world. And heaven responds not reluctantly, but eagerly. Because your faith becomes the landing strip for His power. Your belief becomes the bridge between the unseen and the seen. And with every word of faith, that bridge becomes stronger. It pulls the miraculous into your moment. Some think that miracles are reserved for the elite, the holy, or the extraordinary. But that is not the truth. Miracles respond to belief. And belief is the great equalizer. Accessible to anyone, anywhere, at any moment. The woman with the issue of blood touched the hem of His garment, not with permission, but with faith. And Jesus turned and said, "Your faith," her believing heart, gave her a voice heaven could not ignore. It is the same for you. You may not feel strong. You may not feel seen. But your heart, when it believes, carries power. You don't need to shout to be heard in heaven. You only need to speak with trust. The whisper of faith resounds louder than the scream of fear. When you say, "God, I believe You are working even now," all of heaven leans in. Angels are dispatched. Doors begin to move. Alignments begin to happen because your voice has connected with the frequency of the divine. And it doesn't stop at you. The voice of a believing heart changes atmospheres. It affects homes, families, generations. When you speak by faith, you're not just shifting your situation, you're shifting your legacy. Children will see it. Friends will sense it. The spiritual world will recognize it, because the believing heart does not just survive, it transforms. It speaks with the authority of heaven, even in the middle of human frailty. There is a reason why Scripture says, without faith it is impossible to please God, because faith is the language of heaven. It is the heart's way of saying, God, I trust you more than I trust what I see. And every time that belief is voiced, something sacred is released. Not always instantly, not always in the way you expect, but always powerfully, always purposefully, always with divine response. So if your world feels heavy, if your path feels unclear, if your strength feels gone, speak anyway. Not from fear, not from panic, but from faith. Even if all you can say is, God, I believe you're with me, that is enough. That is the voice of a believing heart. And heaven will respond, not because you've earned it, but because that kind of faith honors God. And you will never ignore the sound of it. Let your heart rise. Let your voice be heard, and watch as the supernatural begins to unfold, not someday, not for someone else, but for you, right here, right now. If you speak this prayer today with an open heart, a miracle is not only possible, it is inevitable. The moment you speak this prayer, truly speak it, God begins to move. Your job is not to make it happen. Your job is to believe that He will. So take the leap, speak the prayer, and watch the miracle begin.